Hello guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Skills and Abilities. Today we're going to be going over another one of the assassin trap skills, and this is the lightning sentry. The lightning sentry is probably one of the most loved ones on the trap tree because it dishes out a pretty amazing amount of damage in a straight line. Because, of course, it's a lightning bolt. So the lightning bolt goes in a straight line, dishes out that damage in a straight line. And, of course, those guys are immune to lightning. One of the biggest issues is a lot of monsters are immune to lightning. And up until recently, we couldn't really break immunities with traps because they counted as minions, and your negative resistance didn't apply to your minions, and so forth and so on. And so things got a little bit tricky and a little bit hairy. But recently, in the last couple patches, they've done a lot of changes to the trap tree. And most notably is they've made it so that the lightning sentry, number one, no longer counts as an elite on the map, so it doesn't mess with the elite spawns. Number two, you can apply negative resistance, which means that in terms of like things like Crescent Moon, Griffin's Eye Diadem, lightning facets, things like that do actually work with Lightning Sentry now, which is absolutely great. On top of this, they also messed around with the next hit delay changes, which means that there's a lot less next hit delay problems in terms of the trap skills, so they hit more often and more reliably. And when it comes to the Lightning Sentry, the damage that they put out is very nice. It's in a straight line. It often hits multiple targets as it passes through them. And of course, you can dish out pretty nice amounts of damage with your Lightning Sentry. If the monster is immune to lightning, for whatever reason, it does make things a little bit more tricky. And as you notice, it's a little bit difficult to dish out damage to a target that is chasing you around, so it's much better when they stand still for you and let you kill them. Well, you're not really that kind of a character as a trap sin. You don't really stand still very much and let monsters kill you. So, in general, you may want to get access to a minion to help tank a little bit. Either the Shadow Warrior or the Shadow Master. Now, once you have the Shadow Warrior or the Shadow Master, you can send them in and let them do their thing. It is important to note that the Shadow Master, however, will also cast traps, and those traps actually do take up the slots for your traps. So do be aware that you can end up getting a little bit of an interference from the Shadow Master in terms of his trap casting, or her trap casting, rather. As you can see, they dish out pretty decent amounts of damage, even without negative resistance. But when you encounter monsters that are immune to lightning or lightning enchanted, you will notice that you're going to have a considerable time taking on those lightning enchanted monsters. Now, to build Lightning Sentry, you do have to build a lot of other things. Shockweb is a synergy for Lightning Sentry, as well as Charged Bolt is a synergy for Lightning Sentry, and those are the two main skills that you have to put points into to get access to Lightning Sentry. Lightning Sentry itself is not the best in terms of single target damage, believe it or not. It's actually the best in terms of AoE damage. The best in terms of single target is actually Charged Bolt Sentry, believe it or not, but it does require some very specific casting. You do have to cast it basically right next to the target, and they basically all need to be in the same place. So if you were to cast them like right here, you'll notice the monster will just get annihilated by the charge bolts. Of course, that guy's immune to lightning, but let's see if we can do this one. And it does pretty significant amounts of damage in terms of per bolt, but it does have to be shotgunned into the target, which means it has to be at close range, and you have to put them all basically in the same spot. And it also has some other considerations like the size of the monster. So the bigger monsters like Diablo, for instance, will take more damage from it than, say, a smaller monster like an imp. And it has to do with the number of bolts that can hit a larger monster versus a smaller monster. Another thing that's important about the Lightning Sentry is that, it doesn't really do very good damage on the average. So even though it says 10,418 damage, you really can't take that as an example of how much damage it actually does, because it rolls between 1 to 10,418. So if you take your 10,418 and you add 1, and then you divide that by 2, you will end up with 5,209.5, which is your average damage. And then you multiply that out by 5 sentries, and you get an average damage of 26,047 per shot from all 5 sentries, and then you multiply that by the 10 times that they are capable of shooting before they, go poof, and you got about 260,475 damage per set of lightning sentries. when it comes to damage output, it is highly variable. And this is the rather unfortunate thing with lightning, is that lightning just has a huge variance on how much damage it actually puts out. So if you go into an area and you cast like one lightning sentry on a monster, let's see if we can find one good monster. So if I cast a lightning sentry, you'll notice that it does good damage, really good damage, really good damage, really good damage. It rolled pretty good on most of those hits, but the first one was pretty low. And we can try it again. So pretty much one-shot that guy. And every single shot is going to be like that. It's going to be a roll in between these two vast numbers, which means that sometimes you're going to end up with some pretty garbage numbers that do pretty much nothing, and sometimes you're going to end up with some really nice numbers that do a large amount of damage. And in terms of variability, the Lightning Sentry is not the best. It does not have good average damage, and it can roll very poorly multiple times in a row. It's just kind of how it works. Even with all 5 of them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it can still roll pretty crappy. Now, traps are governed by attack speed, not cast rate. So if you want to increase the speed of your casting, you have to increase your attack speed. One way that you can do this is with burst of speed. So if I throw burst of speed up, you'll notice I can now cast much faster. Burst of speed, as well as increased attack speed on your weapons, as well as the attack speed of your weapon. All of this governs the speed at which you can drop these traps. And obviously, as you're running away for your life, a lot of the times trying to not die from, monsters who are trying to eat your face, you might not have a lot of time to stop and go drop your traps and continue. Right? So being able to drop your traps quickly is actually quite an advantage, especially when you consider that you're going to do a lot of kiting. And that's really what this character is. This character is a lot of kiting. You're going to need a good mercenary. You're going to need a good minion. With a good mercenary and a good minion, you can usually get enough tanking done to hold the monsters still for long enough that you will be able to kill them relatively easily with your traps. And that's really what it comes down to, is you want your minions in there tanking for you while you're doing the bulk of the work from the back. You're not really a melee character, you're just, it's kind of what you do, right? Now, Lightning Sentry isn't the only ability that you're going to be using as as a trap sin, and I think it's important to talk about the other skill, which is Death Sentry. Death Sentry is kind of like Lightning Sentry, except it doesn't work the same as Lightning Sentry. It doesn't really have good damage, not comparably anyway, even to any of the others. So even if I were to cast 5 of these right now, you can see it doesn't really do a significant amount of damage to the zombie, not like the other ones do. Even all 5 of them took quite a few shots to kill the zombie, whereas Lightning Sentry can do the same thing and probably with 1 sentry and kill it just as fast, if not faster. The bonus of Death Sentry added into the mix is that it has corpse explosions. Corpse explosions can do a massive amount of damage by blowing up the bodies and causing a decent amount of damage that way. The corpse explosions, unfortunately, though, or the death sentries, will take up one of your slots, so keep that in mind. So as you're casting your lightning sentries, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you got your 5 lightning sentries up. If you cast a death sentry, it's going to pop one of your lightning sentries. Now, it's always kind of nice to have one of your death sentries up, because the corpse explosions are very nice. But another one of the issues with the death sentry is that if there's no bodies, it will just fire lightning. And because it just fires lightning when there's no bodies, it kind of wastes its charges, which is a little bit of an issue. All in all, Lightning Sentry is definitely one of the more powerful abilities on the trap tree, and lightning trap sins are pretty popular, especially nowadays with the increase in, basically the usability of it, allowing them to get access to things like negative resistance, allowing them to get, not take up elite spots as they're farming, all of which have made for some pretty amazing trap sins in the past 2 seasons. Actually, the last season, I think, was the biggest, because all the trap sins last season were were coming in because the negative resistance was finally fixed, and that enabled everybody to utilize things like I said, Crescent Moon, Griffin's Eye Diadem, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, which gets you tons of negative resistance, and just in general is absolutely amazing. And then on top of that, you can also look for things like plus trap claws that have 2 sockets in them, and then you can put 2 facets in those, and you can dual wield 2 trap claws with 2 lightning facets for 4 lightning facets each, and plus 6 skills and so forth and so on. And that's actually very nice too. That is very nice as well. As always, I do appreciate you guys and gals watching my videos, even when we're just talking about Lightning Sentry. And as always, keep watching.